So Tyler didn't want to be accused of saying what I'm about to say, but we were clearly over the last 5 minutes or so thinking and consider. I won't throw Tyler under the bus. I was saying that how would it be to be a fly on the wall to look at Drew trying to figure out the technology that is trying to get on a freaking link podcast through a phone? The most technologically unadvanced individual we know.
It was well, being I just turned my computer on and checked my emails for the first time since July the 31st. There was a lot of uploading I had to do. First, my battery was dead, and then I had to upload about 20,000 emails. So, yeah, the phone was a much better choice.
And I appreciate you saying. I thought I'd be in the spirit this morning, put my honey break hat on.
That's what I'm
and I'll tell
talking
you a
about.
funny story about this honey break hat. So this is one of your canvas hats that is has the wax on it, that has the
super warm.
If nobody's experienced southern duck hunting with canvas, leather, and the waterproofing materials, there's a very distinct smell associated with it. Okay, it's this thing that kids are brought up with in the South. This they smell that every year at a certain time of the year. They're like, okay, it's duck hunting season right now, right?
Right.
So we got this hat. You gave me this hat. Thank you so much for that. When we visited in October, and I brought it home, and I had it up here in my office. And obviously, it's a very strong smell that permeates everything.
Right.
And my wife came to me one day and she was like, what the hell is that smell coming out of your room? I was like, what are you talking about? And we finally figured out it was this hat. And she says, that hat needs to live in the attic because I can't have my house smelling like that. Yeah. So this morning I had to go into the attic
and get your hat.
Pull out my hat, and it'll be relegated back to the attic, unfortunately, after the podcast. But
yeah. Well,
Drew,
that boonie hat that I wear, you ought to smell it. It's got a pretty righteous smell in it. I've had it for about 20 years. So.
Yeah, that's a different kind of smell.
Got to change the oil in a couple times,
Yeah. Well, Drew Keith, welcome to the Blood Origins podcast. This is your second time on the Blood Origins podcast.
Yes, sir.
Tyler Jordan, this is your first. We're breaking your cherry on a Blood Origins podcast for the first time. Hopefully not the last time.
Yes, I hope so. Finally, we've known each other for quite a while now. I think we haven't seen each other in 5 or 6 years at SHOT Show, but I'm glad we could reconnect and on here. So it will definitely not be the last time.
Yeah. Well, boys, we're here for a very special reason, and I will give the sort of version of my story, and then what I'd like to do is just again, we'll just go down rabbit holes as rabbit holes materialize, but I'm sitting in Bulawayo, Zimbabwe. Okay. And Drew Keith texts me. And he says, are you back yet? And when I look at, and Drew, I don't know if you read the text messages properly or whatnot. I didn't read Drew Keith. I read actually Drew Seals. Drew Seals is one of my cinematographers. And I'm like, why is Drew Seals texting me? Like, okay. And I said, no, but I'll take care. I think my response back was to you, I'll take care of the voiceovers when I get back. And Drew Keith must have been like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? Like, And then I get
I'm texting
I get a series of text messages of one of the most amazing deer I've ever seen. And I'm like, what the heck is this? And underneath it says the Louisiana State Record just went down. And lo and behold, again, I'm sitting in Bulawayo, Zimbabwe. It's freaking 108 degrees, no air conditioning outside, and I'm sitting in a banquet hall. And who's sitting next to me are two proud, long-standing Louisianans, a guy called John Jackson and Chrissy Jackson, that have a bunch of conservation easements actually south of Honeybreak. And I was telling them where Honeybreak was and whatnot. And I said, and they're huge whitetail hunters. And I turned to them and I said, I bet you I know something you don't know. And I said, I think the Louisiana State Record Whitetail buck just went down. And here are the photos. And they just went berserk, as everybody has gone berserk on. Drew, I'll start with you. Louisiana is not known for big whitetails. The
It hasn't
South
been, no.
isn't.
That's
South
right.
Mississippi, South Louisiana, people are like, come on. Whitetails, you're talking like 110s, 115s. Come on, guys. They come out the swamp. They don't really, amount to much. I
Mississippi
think you
River
proved that
Delta.
myth wrong, right?
That's right. It's all part of the Mississippi alluvial floodplain. So, 43% of the United States drains down through between Louisiana and Mississippi. So, and we're in that delta. The minerals are there, but
But Drew, it's more than that, man.
it is
You
more than
showed
that.
me. You drove me around, and you're like, Robbie, from horizon to horizon at Honey Break, all you used to see was cotton ground, or
Right,
maize ground, or soybean ground.
right,
It's not like
right.
that today.
No, well, one of the biggest things is the original owner was a Jewish family from New Jersey, and then Mr. John Barton ended up buying the 120,000 acres, and he sold 60,000 acres to the state to make a Dewey Wills WMA, and then he sold 60,000 acres to a family from Nebraska, which became the Louisiana Delta Plantation, which became Hunting Break. And so uh, years ago, I mean, and it happened in Georgia. It's happened. I talked with Mr. Bill Jordan about that. It's happened in several states. In the South, we would trade them turkeys in Wisconsin for the Wisconsin Blue genetics, and they would bring the Wisconsin Blues down here, and they mix with our Delta bucks, because you got hill deer in Louisiana, you've got swamp bucks in Louisiana, and then you got the marsh bucks, and so the swamp bucks mixed with this Wisconsin Blue genetics has really made for we've got just about every situation. You've got the high and tight, and you got the gnarly non-typical, but you get these huge body weights and really really good mass. If you let them get old enough, you've got the really good mass. So that's there were deer brought in here, but like most other states, it was back in the late '60s, early '70s to the WMA, and we just happened to be lucky enough to own the land right next to the WMA, and then we treat them with care so, and let
But
them get old.
you've also replanted, like you told me, like these massive woods that now occur on Honey Break. They're now, what are they? 15 years
But
old, 20 years
no,
old?
no, they're 20 years old. So when I started at Hunting Break, it was Louisiana Dutch Plantation, and those it was all ag fields, and so those saplings were all bare. I mean, all the trees you see now were all bare root saplings. So it was you could see from one side to the other. It's now they're 30, 40 feet tall. So it took about 6 years to plant 850,000 trees. And then that was phase one. Phase two was 370,000 trees, and phase three was about 250,000 trees. So we've doubled our habitat in the last 5 years. So it's used to when I started there, you'd see deer along the ditches and the little small woodlots around oil field locations and stuff like that and bayous, and they would be like gypsies. You'd catch them, 4 and 5 miles away from where you saw them last time. And now, because of the habitat, they've thrived, and they'll stay relatively close. I mean, this deer that Tyler killed, we killed his dad in 2024 or in 2020, only because he had hoof rot. We took him at 5.5 years old, and he was completely on the other side of the farm. And Stomper Jr. stayed over there for, I don't know, the first 4 years of his life. And then all of a sudden, he decided he wanted to go to the east side of the farm. He's more in the central east side of the farm, and that's where he stayed until we were able to get him mature enough to harvest.
It's a funny story, and Tyler, you obviously get to hunt all over the Southeast. I don't think the private whitetail landowner gets enough credit for the conservation work that they do. Think
Yeah.
about the effort that Drew just glanced over, just like lost, like, we planted 1.35 million trees. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Who's doing that? Show me a humane society or a PETA that's going into place and doing this for wildlife.
Yeah. And I think to me, that's what's so much fun about our farms as well. I mean, we don't have the acreage that Honey Break has, of course, but we have two farms that my dad has had since 2000 that we've invested a lot of time, money, resources in. And I would say that the overall habitat not just on our property, but just our neighbors too. And we have some neighbors that are on, kind of the same management programs that we are, not just in harvesting deer, but just planting food plots, investing money in different trees. And
Timber stand
it's
improvement.
a lot of TSI. I mean, there's a ton of TSI on both properties, and I think that's what's fun to me. I grew up doing that on our farm, and I've seen different properties that we've had leased over the years, and I would argue that it makes the overall habitat so much better. And that's what Drew's done there, and I don't think they get enough credit down there. I've seen some comments on social media saying high fences, it must be easy, but I can tell you just from overall experience, there's nothing easy about what everybody does here. There's so much time and effort that goes into it to get it to this point, and there's no guarantee that it gets to this point, right? I mean, we have property. You have two separate tracks here in Georgia. I would say one of them is really good. It's not honey break by any means, but then the other one, we do what we can, but we may not have the neighbors, which is fine, that are on the same management programs that we are. But that's what it takes, to get it to where Drew has gotten it and to where Honey Break has gotten it. It takes a lot of things to go right. So you can only control so much, but I mean, that's what they've done there.
No, to be honest, I think somebody looking at a private whitetail landowner, okay, for the most part, let's exclude honey break for a second. For the most part, these guys are doing it because they want they're managing for a specific value of animal, and that value of animal happens to be this trophy whitetail. Okay. However, these things called keystone species in ecosystems and environments, and in the southeast, the whitetail happens to be that keystone species that you're managing for that keystone species. You're doing TSI, you're doing food plots, you're planting native worms, grass buffers, and everything trickles down from there, right? You've got the benefits to the wood ducks, you've got the benefits to the quail, the squirrels, the insects, the amphibians, the snakes, you name it. All of it comes and is benefited because of this value that is put on this one class of animal at the top of the food chain, specifically for what you want to do. Now, Honey Break has an added value to it, which is where Realtree comes in. Honey Break says, well, I'm going to do the same thing, but we're also in a business here, and we have to make sure that our land is going to pay for itself. And so we are monetizing the economic value of that large trophy animal. Is that correct, Drew?
That's correct. That's right. And it's not so much, everybody thinks that like we're an outfitter, like you can just come down here and buy a deer hunt. We don't. We made a decision years ago not to do that, and so we would rather have somebody that's going to treat the land as we would treat it that wants to see it reach its full potential. So we've had several different partners in the past. We had Hank Parker had them leased for 3 years. Remington had them leased for several years. Now Realtree's had it, and so they've had it for technically since 2020. They started the fall of 2019, but it was 2020 whenever they really started airing most of the stuff. So it's been a great relationship. It's not, and like I say, it's nothing. Uh, they take the same pride in growing the animal, or the same respect for the animal to get it to its fullest potential, versus what everybody perceives, or the haters are going to say, oh, we're going to show up and shoot one. And so I mean, there's a 160-inch 8-point on our farm right now that's 9.5 years old that Tyler's hunted, I think, 57 days last year and this year with his bow, and hasn't killed it yet. We could kill him with a rifle, but he's hunting with his bow, and so he is. His wife is not happy about that,
Yeah.
but that's the respect for the animal. I mean, that's the same thing with it. I've told Tyler no. I've told Riley Green. I've told several other people no on Stomper Junior, because when you see a deer like that at that young has that kind of time length and mass and number of times, he's going to be something special. So that's the kind of deer you want to let go. And so people say, "Oh, you name the deer." Well, when you have a just under 20,000 acre farm that has no fence, not even a low fence, it has no fence. It's got gates for the honest people. You have to to be able to, you can say big 8 point. Well, if you got 50 of those, that you're going to run out of numbers. So yeah, big 10 point number three. So
Yeah.
it's been a great partnership. And like I say, oh, I wonder what he paid for that. Well, I promise you, he didn't pay what I could have got on the open market. But that's not what I'm doing it for. And that's not what
Yeah.
they're doing it for.
Yeah, and I feel like we treat that place just like we do our own farm. We
Right.
go through, different deer with Drew and, Cole, who also helps with the deer stuff there. We go through a different list of deer that we want to take. We'll take some different guests down there because they really enjoy, obviously, what Honey Break has to offer. And, there's several deer, though, that we want to let go, and we kind of hope that the neighbors, I don't have the relationship with them, but I know there's some of them there that where we try to say, hey, we'd love to see this deer go another 2 years, another year, and that's kind of the beauty of what that place does. Even though Honey Break does have the acreage, I would argue that it does take even your neighbors to some extent to get it to where you want it to go.
That's right.
Because like I said, we have a property here that it's just not that way. We have the same amount of acreage pretty much in both places, but you have to have everybody kind of on the same page. And, sometimes you don't have people that are neighbors are willing to invest in the same things that you believe in. And that's okay. That's just part of it. A lot of people don't.
Sure.
But that's where Honey Break is a little bit different and separates itself kind of from everybody else down in this part of the country. So it's a beautiful thing. And and Drew, talk a little bit about even some of I've seen it down there. You guys do what you can on the food plots and stuff, but as we've seen with rain and everything, like a lot of that gets washed away.
Oh,
So it's not like that these deer have overall native grasses and habitat, but the food plots to me, while some of them do, get to where you want them to go, a lot of them don't.
oh. Well, I mean, like I say, when you're planting 800 acres of food plots, about 5 acres at a time, that's a lot to say grace over. I mean, just the time put into it and the fertilizer, all that kind of good stuff that goes along with it. So, and we are in the part of the alluvial floodplain. So, and then we're part of the lowest part of the parish. If it rains in Jonesville, we get the water. So,
Yeah.
and we have elevated food plots, and we have some that sits on the flat ground. But the neighbors, Louisiana Death Plantation, like I say, was at one time was 106,000 acres of row crop, and so our chunk that we're on was 60,000, and we owned 40,000 or 41,000 acres of that last contiguous, the biggest contiguous part of that. And since then, we've sold off some, and so those guys still farm, right next to us. So that, yeah, we don't have a fence, but for that reason, we know those deer need that food source. We're fortunate enough that they spend their summers over there, and then their winters on us. But we try to make it as appealing for the deer on us, so they don't want to travel. We don't feed protein. The only time I've ever fed protein at Honey Break was because of the flood years, and so we put feeders out on the high parts just to feed the deer because nobody could plant soybeans around us. Nobody could plant the milo around us. We couldn't plant food plots. So yeah, we do what we can, to manage that. We do the same thing you talked about on managing the timber. So once WRP gets to 18 years, then you can go in there and do patch openings, which means you're taking out all the oaks and leaving all the off trees. But what that does is makes a little thicket. So they'll come in there on a tract this size, and we'll cut 1 acre cuts on a tract. My personal property was a lot smaller than that. We did quarter-acre cuts, and man, it just totally it made our habitat. Made deer started utilizing those patch openings. When you cut them off, you leave the treetops on the edges of this circle, and the deer start using it for bedding. Turkeys start using it for nesting. It's just to get away from the predators. It's just we're doing everything we can to make it the best habitat possible, and we spend a lot of money doing that, and we take pride in it. But we're trying to leave it better than we found it.
Yeah.
Tyler, let me ask this question. It's, and I used an African example to sort of do a comparison here. A lot of people go into Africa, big concession people, and they go, okay, we're going to buy the concession for this property 5 years, 10 years. Okay. I don't know the situation in terms of how long you have the lease of Honey Break, but I can almost like say, hey, we're going to buy it for 5 years. How the rhetoric in Africa is like, if I only get it for 5 years, I don't know if I'm going to get it again, the lease again. So I'm just going to take what I can get.
Yeah.
Tell me about mindset there, because, for instance, this deer that we're about to talk about, You probably saw it last year. There was probably a frickin' tank last year. And for some reason you said, no, we're not
Yeah.
taking it.
Yeah.
Talk to me through that. Like, because it is time, quality deer management is time, but
Yeah.
there's also like, you're paying to kill deer. Okay.
Yeah.
And this antithetical argument, the sort of push and pull in your brain is like, whoa, we're here to kill deer, but I'm not going to kill this deer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to me, that's pretty easy because, even here in Georgia, I keep going back to our place here. There's so many deer that I will text the neighbors that we have a good relationship with or have a relationship with for the ones that really care about it. And we'll say, look, this deer right here, we believe he's 4.5. We believe he's 5.5. We want to see him go another year. And, there's so many times. I mean, I'm talking about hundreds of times in the 24 years we've owned this place here in Georgia where that deer just doesn't make it. Whether he's hit by a car, whether he is killed by the neighbor. Some of these deer travel. We've had a deer travel on us 6 miles to the neighboring properties. He's gone several properties over, and so we lose our opportunity. He doesn't get to that next year of maturity, but that's the kind of, I think, we talk about all these different things that you can do to improve habitat, improve wildlife. To me, birthdays is still the biggest key here. I still think deer need birthdays more than they do just about anything else. But a lot of times, more times than not, it's kind of like baseball averages. You're going to lose out. You're going to have deer that just don't make it for whatever reason. And so, for this deer at Honey Break, it was really easy to me going, man, we have the potential. I didn't think he was going to be a state record, even when we saw him in, the first year in 2021, I believe is when it was. I wasn't thinking, man, where this is going to be just a giant. But to me, deer like that, if you really want to see them reach their full potential, you're going to have some patience, and you're also going to have to know that it may not work out because I mean, there are neighbors there that I'm sure that would have shot him last year had they had seen him or the year
Right.
before. But to me, that's just kind of the roll the dice mentality that you're going to have. If you want to see them get to this age structure, and if you want to build that age structure, not just for now, but for the future. So to me, it was, that's not even was never really in doubt, even when we had maybe opportunities the last 2 years, because we practice the same thing here in Georgia. Now, we don't have the deer that Honey Break does, but if we ever want to see it get to that point, it just requires a lot of patience.
Well, I
I mean,
think you just nailed
I
it on
think,
the head,
yeah, I
right?
think
Just
the
hold on.
question. Go
Go
ahead. Go
ahead,
ahead.
Drew. Go ahead.
Oh, well, to answer the question that you asked, Tyler, uh, and I could probably answer it better than him because most people, yeah, when they have, like, oh, this is, I mean, I can't tell you, that's our last year in Texas lease. Let's go over and shoot everything we can because we're not coming back. I could have anybody in America come over here and lease this property, and I, you know how much my phone rings for that. How many people that come here different. I mean, duck hunt would like to add on a deer hunt. That's why Realtree has it because it's not about the money because it's like I say it's not the value is not there. I spend a lot more money than what I'm getting out of on maintaining it, but it's about their mindset and their goals, and so I would rather have somebody like that than monetize it as a per deer price, X amount of deer, so I'd rather them have the lease on them because I know when I tell them this deer has potential or we all put our heads together, like you said, we're all going to look at deer. We're going to say, this one right here, we need to let go. And that's what we're going to do. And then he needs 3 more years or he needs 2 more years or we're going to go ahead and take him now. So it's,
Yeah.
it's, it's almost like they're not a sponsor. They're not a client. They're a partner. And so it's more, maybe to me, it's like they're treating it like it's their land and I respect them for that, and that's why they have the lease.
Yeah, and I think like Drew said, I mean, we try to be stewards of the land just like our place, not worrying about if it's going to go into the next 5 years on our agreement with Honey Break or just one more year or whatever it is. I mean, we just want to do what's best for the overall, deer herd down there and the management. And, sometimes a deer like that may get off of you or he may go to somebody else, but that's the risk you take in something like that.
Yeah.
I think you
But it's
nailed
a
it on
good
the
time to
head. You
renegotiate,
said,
Robbie.
It is, yeah, it
I think you
is.
nailed it on the head that you said you can do everything right,
Right.
but you're still rolling the dice
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
at the end of the day.
We had a neighbor last year killed a 162-inch 8 point, and so you'd think that there's not a lot of those running around. And 2 days later, the deer that Tyler had been hunting, he was back on camera. So It was crazy. We had two of them. We didn't know about it. We only knew we had one.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
like a
and
deer.
that's a common story, right? People that deer just show up and they're like, "Where the hell did this
Right.
deer come from?"
Right.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think there's a misconception too, because I think we get it too, like on our place, and we had a story last year on our farm where a deer would double drop tines. People just think just because they're on honey break or they're on Realtree Farms that those deer just don't leave. Well, that's just not the case. I mean, I feel like all of our deer at some point throughout the season, we do have deer that live on us and stay on us, but deer don't do that. That's just not what they do. They're wild animals. We had a deer at honey break, Drew. This has probably been, back in 2020 or 2021 that him and I had it, at 40 yards. And we could have easily shot that deer, and the deer was broke up, and we were trying to let him go. And this deer had the potential to be another Stomper Junior caliber deer. But what happened, which is totally fine, this is just part of the process. But I think somebody ended up killing that deer within 2 weeks, 2 weeks of us seeing him.
Right.
And so those are the times that you're gonna lose a lot, but you hopefully that it kind of balances itself out
It's
and
a
that
numbers
the long
thing.
run. Yeah,
We're gonna do more to hold the deer on us so they don't want to leave, but you're gonna lose some. So, but we're gonna have more success stories than we are failures. So,
that's right.
So, Drew, let's talk about this deer. Let's talk about this deer. Give me the history of this deer. You've talked about it. It's his dad kind of scenario. Rewind the clock a little bit and explain, like, when you first saw this deer, that kind of stuff.
the story is really more about his dad. So his dad, uh, 10 years ago, or actually probably 12 years ago, we would be checking cameras, and he was like the most docile deer. I mean, like we'd ride by him, it's like he is so stupid. He's not running off. But you got to think about it. That's what most people don't understand. When I first started here, I made a decision not to shoot bucks for 6 years because I was focusing on the ducks and trying to get all the duck stuff lined up. So then when I started hunting deer, my age structure was 6 years and a buck. And then at the same time, the habitat was growing thicker, so we could hold the deer. So that was number one. That was the biggest thing. So then, if you're born and you wake up around 500 shotgun blasts every morning during duck season, and tractors and four wheelers and rangers and boats and all this kind of stuff, then they get used to that sound. So um, it's not like we're just going out there to public land and sneaking in somewhere. Like to me, it seems like the sneaky you are on our place, the more their radar goes up. The more noise you make, the more you smell like grease and diesel and pee by your stand. Then hey, let's go check it out. Yeah. Uh, so I guess watching that deer, I was like, man, I hope he stays in the middle because he's going to get killed because he is just a gorgeous 2.5-year-old 10 point. And then the next year, it just a 3.5-year-old 10 point, I mean, super wide. Well, not stupid wide, not like 28 or like that, but a good 20 inches wide, good tall time length. You could just see that he had a bigger rack of horns than his body looked like, and so once we saw that and identified that deer, said, well, we're going to let him go as far as we can. As luck would have it, he ends up getting hoof rot and loses about 100 pounds. And so instead of letting the coyotes or a buck fight kill this deer and not ever get him the recognition he needed to get, we decided at that time we were going to take him. We thought he was 4.5. He ended up actually being 5.5. So, and that deer scored 193 before it was gross. But his main beam, his G2s and three, G2 split, and it looked like a 2 and 3, but it was right at the base. So he lost 30 inches of bone from the deduction, which I don't agree with that. I think if he grows it, it ought to be counted, but I don't make the rules. I just follow. And so next thing you know, a couple years later, we see this
So
deer.
was
It's like,
that
oh
the
my,
biggest deer? Was that the biggest deer you had ever taken off of honey break at that
no, sir.
point in time?
No, sir. There was a 229 that was killed on part of the Louisiana by one of the farmers on the part of the Louisiana Dutch plantation that before it was hunting break, that was shot with a 204, and it butted up right up to the Dewey wheels. It butted up right to the reserve, and there was no hunting area, so the deer was able to get old enough to not be harassed. And this farmer was driving out to his stand to take his grandson to shoot hogs because he just called me and said, I ain't seen a deer in 2.5 weeks. I'm taking this grandboy of mine out here to shoot some hogs. And lo and behold, there's a 229 out in this wheat field at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And so he shoots him with a 204, which is illegal in Louisiana. But if you're a farmer, it's great for coyotes and anything you see. So he shoots him. And it's got to be bigger than 22 caliber and a no rim fire. He shoots the deer, goes and puts it in the big buck contest, and they're like, "Sir, are you sure that's what you shot it with?" Yep, shot him with that Christian Arms 204. Are you sure? So that deer cost him $11,000 to get the antlers back from the wildlife fishers once they confiscated it. So
Wow.
anyway, so that's when I knew I had the chance to grow on a state record because that would have been. I mean, but he had drop tines and all kind of stuff. But he was so
What year was
huge.
that?
2010.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, so uh, then Stomper Jr. comes along and at 5.5, I'm thinking he's 4.5, but at 5.5, he's 193. Then I'm like,
So
I really
Stomper
do have
Jr. is the one with the hoof rot.
no, Stomper is. Stomper, his
Stomper
dad.
is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stomper, but Stomper Jr. was bigger than Stomper.
Yeah. Stomper Jr. was bigger than his dad. Yeah. So so then once I saw Stomper Jr., then I knew we're fixing to do this. And I told several people that was the goal to grow the straight record probably, I don't know, 12, 14 years ago. And here we are today talking about it. So it's
But on the Stomper deer too, we went in there and hunted that spot, and we were not thinking that deer had only been daylight one time on camera, like in the last 2 weeks. And so
this
we
is
were
Stomper
actually in there
this is
Jr.
the
hunting
best. You're gonna love this. This is the best part of the story. The first encounter Tyler had with him.
with Stomper.
No, you're talking about Stomper. Okay,
I'm talking
I
about
thought.
Stomper. Yeah.
Okay,
So Stomper, though, when we went in there and took Stomper, there was actually another deer we were in there hunting. And so we had not seen Stomper. He had not been on camera in 2 weeks. And this was actually, I think, during COVID, maybe. And so
yep,
we had been
2020.
down there a little while and,
Yep,
trying to hunt this deer. And so, but, we decided to go hunt another one thinking Stomper may show up. And man, just, the hoof rot deal, kind of a sad story. I mean, I think the rut was just about to like really kick off and get going. And I don't think this deer, just by looking at him, he was so
he
thin,
lost
lost
100
a ton of
pounds
weight. And I don't think that deer would have made it another 2 to 3 weeks. I really
Mhm,
don't. It was
for
honestly a
sure.
pretty sad deal. So real happy to take a deer like that and to do it down there. But, you wish you could have seen that deer, get to another year.
For sure.
But at this point, I think judging by just how we were seeing him, kind of wanted to put him out of his misery. Even though it's
Yeah.
fun and you took a big deer, but it was he was in bad shape.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you
Then
actually
so that,
killed Stomper as well, Tyler.
That was
yes,
that was the first year of our partnership down here in 2020.
he said, I'm
Okay,
gonna
so
love
you
this
killed the
place.
dad. You
I
killed
killed
the
the dad.
dad. And so this was the first year you're there, Drew, are you sitting down with Tyler and Bill and saying, okay, guys, these are the deer that we have?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And is
Yeah.
Junior in the mix at that point?
No.
Junior was not in the mix at that point. Senior was in there, but we didn't see Junior until after we killed Senior. And it was like, holy crap, there's two of them. And I said, no, that's his son. And so then it's like, okay, he's not dying for a long time. And so we've
And
had
that
to watch.
was
Yeah,
2 years
3 years ago.
later.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So,
So Drew was saying you had an initial encounter with Junior?
Yes. So it was no. So we had kind of been a little bit concerned because the last 3 seasons. So the first time we got Stomper Jr. was in 2022.
right.
And I think Drew and them on camera, we would get pictures of this deer in September, Stomper Jr. And, this past season, we didn't get any pictures. September came along, October came along, the whole month of October, there were no pictures of Stomper Jr. anywhere. And we had pictures and we had cameras all around his core area where this deer had been living the last couple years. And then it was actually November 2nd was the first time we were actually riding. Me, the guy who was filming, Rigsby, and Cole were actually riding, going to check cameras. And sure enough, there he is. There was Stomper Jr. He had showed up, and I think at the time when we saw the picture, we didn't realize, there was only actually two pictures on that camera that night, but we didn't realize how typical he was, that he could even be a potential state record for a typical. We just knew he had put on a lot of mass, a lot of inches, a lot of tine length, and was something pretty special this year. So the field where he was set it up at, we went to Academy, I think the next day, bought a couple ground blinds, went in this field where he was showing up, put up a ground blind, but the deer for the next 8 to 9 days was only showing up in the middle of the night. He was nowhere close to daylight. I mean, he was anywhere between 11 o'clock at night and 4 o'clock in the morning. And, there was no close to daylight picture, but he was only on this one camera. So we actually, probably not a real smart move here, but we went in there November 11th and hunted that spot, but it was for another deer, a big 8-pointer that had
There
been
was
showing
five
up.
other there was 5 other shooter bucks in that area, and
There were
so
5 other shooter bucks, and I'm thinking, man, look, he's not on this camera every night. He's only in there occasionally, and maybe we can go kill one of these other deer before we left town. We were actually leaving town the next day on November 12th.
and he had been camped out on that big 160-inch 8 point, and his wife was really ready for him to come home. So let's go over here to this high percentage area, and so let's lower our standard up to 160-inch 8 point, and let's just go shoot a 140 or 50-inch 8 point. So that's
That's right.
now you continue the story.
That's the real story. And so anyway, we went in there and we saw a pretty good amount of deer. And then it was probably 2 minutes, like this field, probably 100 yards on the opposite side of where we had the ground blind. 2 minutes after legal shooting light, Stomper Jr. stepped out in the field, and he comes all the way. He walks all the way across the field to us at 20 yards. I ranged him. He was at 20 yards, and biggest deer I've ever had in bow range. But just we would never, do anything like that, past legal light. I think by the time he got all the way across the field, it was 6 to 7 minutes past legal light. And what even to even make matters worse is not only did he come in bow range and put on a show for us and for the camera, and this is all part of the episode that just aired last week, but he actually looked inside the blind, and I think it was so dark inside the blind that the camera, I'm assuming this is what happened, but the camera light was so bright. And he actually came real close to us, probably 15 yards. And as soon as he saw that light, he blew twice and ran.
I'm
And
going
then
to say
that
he
deer
probably saw
actually,
you shaking, because I know how Robbie. I've never seen anybody get buck fever as much as Tyler Durden. That sucker, he just the whole tent line, and the deer knew we couldn't shoot him. He's broadside. What about this side, Tyler? And it's not even close to the rut. He's over there making scrapes in the field. I mean, out in the middle of the field, there's not even trees. Like, look at me, buddy. Can you get me? So,
he put
it,
on a show. It was like the ultimate tease.
but after
But
after he
when
saw that red light, he did not come back to that field
no, he
ever.
didn't. He didn't come. He didn't show up. No, not only that, he didn't show up on any camera for two and a
Yeah,
half weeks.
yeah.
And so we're thinking like we have blown this deer. Like we've messed up our opportunity. I'm at home at this point. I'm pretty sick about it.
Can't wait for the neighbors to show
Um,
us a picture of him.
Yeah, I mean, we're legit. We're count. When rifle season, I think comes in that weekend,
Right.
the weekend that I left, and I'm thinking, man, we've blown this deer to the neighbor, 100%. Like he's gone. And so then I think it was the last week of November. He actually showed up about a half a mile away on another camera, and he got pretty regular there, but kind of going back to his same routine of, only showing up between 11 and 4 o'clock in the morning. So he was, pretty nocturnal by then. And then I think it was 2 days before I came down there. We actually got a daylight photo of him 4 minutes before legal shooting light was there. And that was the only time we had got him. And then 2 days after that picture, I saw on the weather forecast, like, we're going to have a pretty significant cold front. And so I was like, man, there's no blinds or anything set up in this area. But, if we actually want to go try this deer, I think the high on that Thursday that we shot him was maybe like 51 degrees. And so I was like, but we need to try to get down there and set this thing up and, at least just see if we had a chance. And, I think this is the difference between the 8-pointer that I've been hunting for it's been 50 something days hunting this 8 and a deer like Stomper Jr. If we hunted every deer like a big deer, you'd probably be a lot more successful.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think, the more seat time you have, really it's not for the better. You know, you really want to take your opportunities when you can get them, and you know, not just go sit to sit, and really kind of have a strategy. And so I feel like this is what we did with this deer. And
And I will say it was against my better judgment. He wanted to put a tent blind up, and I'm like, this is not a good idea. You're gonna mess it up." And you know, he says, "I never admit when I'm wrong," but he did kill the deer that afternoon out of the tent blind. And the the first deer that came in, like, blew out. The second doe in the early came in, blew out. I'm like, "I told you so. I told you so." And then 26 deer flooded into the food plot, and it's hogs were left and right. It was crazy. It
So
I
what
just
was
think
the
what was
intel? What was the intel that said to you, Tyler? And give me the dates now, because you gave me sort of what was this date now, and give me the intel that you were like, okay, I'm going to do this on this field.
yeah. So I think it was December 9th is when we killed him. I'm pretty sure it was December 9th. And so anyway, we were planning on maybe
No, I
going
think it
down
was
hunting.
no,
December. If you
no,
sent me the right number, if you send
yeah,
it the same in Zimbabwe, I'm sitting. It's like
yeah,
December the 6th.
yeah. It's
Okay.
like yeah, that's right. That's good because you
No, I'm
killed
sorry.
Stomper was killed on December the 5th, and he killed Stomper Jr. on December the 6th.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. I think that's what it was. But anyway, it was 2 days prior to when we killed him that, you know, we had a daylight photo of him. And we were already kind of looking at that weather, you know, from December 5th forward. I think we had 2 days of like the coldest weather that Louisiana had yet. And we've had a really warm
it
fall,
had
you
been
know, down
70,
here in the
80 degrees,
southeast.
miserable hunting. I mean, mosquitoes
Miserable
and
hunting.
yeah.
And so I was like, man, I think when he daylighted, again, it was super close to dark. When he daylighted, I believe it was like 68 degrees or something
Hmm.
like that. You know, I remember looking at the Spartan trail camera, and I said, man, if he daylighted right there, like we have a chance at least for the first couple of days of this cold front to come in. We had that north wind, which we needed. You could only hunt that field on either a north or an east
And he
wind.
daylighted on that field.
He daylighted on that field, and
Okay, okay.
so I was like, man, we just need to go down there. And I think that the day that we killed him, we had 20-mile-an-hour winds, which could be good or bad. You know,
Right.
you may have deer move and wind like that, but where I saw the pro side of that was, man, we can go in there, and you know we're going to be a little bit undetected with that amount of wind. So the deer are not going to know we're in there. We can put up this blind, make a little bit of noise, and hopefully we don't spook or blow too many deer out of there. So we did. We went in there, put up the blind, you know, probably midday, 12 o'clock, went back in and set it at 2 o'clock. And kind of like Drew said, you know, the first couple of deer that came in the field did not light the blind. And so I'm thinking, man, we have messed this up. You know, really typically what you have to kind of do down there is go set a blind up and give the deer a little bit of time to get used to it. You know, and not hunt it, not leave your scent in it. You know, but
Drew,
we
are you
didn't.
in the blind with Tyler?
I'm not in the blind with him.
You're
I'm
just
really
via
close.
text message
Yeah.
listening.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Cole and I were really close, like on the stands, you know, in the peripheral, just so we could be there. I didn't want to
Yeah,
have
yeah.
anything else in the. I didn't want to be me
Sure.
messing anything up. I wanted to
Yeah,
blame it
yeah,
all on Tyler if he
100%.
messed up.
That's right. So it was pretty incredible, and you know, first few deer maybe didn't like it, but then I think it was just so cold, it was so windy. These deer were hungry. It had been raining a couple of days.
I think it had been so
So
hot in the last couple of weeks that it finally got cool, and they felt frisky, like, oh, you know, finally, you know, you got my fur coat on. Let's go out. I mean, even the younger bucks were like chasing and sparring, and you know, starting to bump those, and it's nowhere near. And the next week is really when our rut starts, and that's, you know, the day after Christmas. So
yeah, it was the first day of rut activity we had seen.
you know,
Like we saw a lot of the younger bucks were kind of bumping does, which we had not. We had hunted there for about a month and had not seen that yet. So, um, you know, and I think it was at like right after 5 o'clock. Like I think we had, you know, I think legal shooting light was at 5:34, but I think right after 5 o'clock we had does across the field, five or six of them looking the wood line. I remember telling Brian, who was filming me, I said, they're looking at something, and I just feel like it's a buck just by the way those does were kind of acting. Sure enough, Brian Brian says, "Man, I think I see him." And then sure, he steps in the field and starts walking straight across it. And you know, it was pretty windy, too windy to just yell at him or try to grunt to get him to stop. And I said, as soon as
How
this
far
deer,
is he from the blind at this
he's maybe
point?
130 yards.
yeah.
Okay.
And I said, man, I didn't even tell Brian this. I kind of blacked out a little bit, but I said, when this deer stops, I'm going to shoot, because I don't know if we're going to have too many opportunities,
But hold on. You're
but
not bow hunting?
no,
No,
I'm
no.
not bow hunting. I'm gun hunting.
Okay.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
I don't think you could. We definitely couldn't have bow hunted in that blind on the first day. It would have been
Okay.
pretty challenging. But
Okay.
he stepped out in the field and started making a beeline, and as soon as he stopped, took the shot and dropped him. So it was pretty special.
Yeah.
And then
So
Drew
tell
heard the
me what
shot.
happens. Yeah, tell me, Drew, you hear this shot?
I'm texting Cole. Cole's texting me. We start rallying, packing all our stuff up and getting down and start heading towards them. You know, and I called Tyler just to make for sure. Because I'm not seeing. We had actually seen, Cole and I had actually seen a boar hog headed towards them. Like, this is this is just about our luck. There's gonna be a boar hog going there and blow these deer out of there when we're trying to shoot Stomper Junior. And the way that the deer was, the way that the hog had left, it was going straight to him. And I was like, surely, because he's done that before. He's hunting the big eight and a hog, and then he shoots the hog. And I'm like, buddy, don't shoot the hog. So anyway, I was like, surely he didn't shoot the hog. And I
Tyler,
called him.
are
He's
you
like, what?
texting Drew? Are you
Yeah,
texting
it's like,
Drew saying Stomper
I
Jr.
think
down?
I
yeah,
think Drew called. I think before I could even call or
I
get a
don't
text
think,
out to
yeah,
anybody, Drew
yeah,
called me and was like, "All right, what?" Because I think he could tell by the impact that
yeah.
it sounded
It was
pretty
definitely
good,
a hit. Bow wow.
definitely a hit.
Yeah,
And he was like, talk to me," and I said, "Man, he's down." So,
yeah.
I don't think
I
Drew has moved
levitated
any
after that.
faster. Yeah, I think within 5 minutes, Drew was right there on us. So before I went and actually, did any kind of recovery with the deer, I wanted to wait for Drew and Cole to get there because, it's, just like our place here, it takes a team
It's a
of
group
people,
effort.
and so I wanted to make sure we did the recovery with everybody involved. And, it just kind of reminded me of when we shot Stomper back in 2020, just pretty sweet for everybody. So it was pretty special.
Yeah, for sure.
What was it like, Drew, walking up on that deer for the first time?
Well, there was no ground shrinkage, just like his daddy. There was no ground shrinkage on him. It was surreal. Like I say, I couldn't think of a better person to take, to be able to harvest a deer like this, and to have Cole and Tyler, and I all there together. It was a pretty special moment when he looks like he's a bunch of cypress knees laying on the ground. When you walk up to him, then you put your hands on him, and then you realize his antlers made his body look small. He's a lot bigger body wise than we thought. But his dadgum antlers were so huge that I mean his neck. I mean, when you're packing that kind of mass around and going through the brush, I mean, you get big muscles. And so there was nothing at all that was a letdown or built up or over exaggerated. It was, if anything, he was bigger than we thought.
Did you
Yeah.
think at that time, this is the state record?
Well, I had him at 210 in my mind from the picture that I'd seen, but I was thinking his G2s were 15 and 16 inches. I mean G3s, and they end up being right at 13. So the yeah, I'd already kind of had him at the state record, just depending on the deductions he got. Like I say, if you grow it, it ought to count. So, but that's, like I say, I don't make those rules. But yeah, I had him figured a little bit higher. But even with the drying, the dry score, I think he's still going to be about 5 or 6 inches bigger than the record that was set back in 1939.
Yeah.
1939.
Unheard of.
Almost 100
Yeah,
years.
yeah,
90
yeah,
something years.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Tyler?
Yeah. I mean, and what's crazy is like I think I went and looked at some of those, and some of those records, especially for Louisiana. I don't think there was many deer that have even been in the top 20, before 1960.
Right.
So after 1960, there was not a whole lot of deer that really have been entered, and that so you realize that I'm not saying this may never be broken because I don't doubt Drew. He's going to try to break it, and I think if we can, it probably has the genetics and the potential. But who would have thought, especially for my biggest deer that I've ever seen, probably ever will see. I'll never see another typical like this in my life again. I just would not have ever guessed Louisiana of all places.
Tyler, this is the
And
biggest typical you've ever killed?
oh, I will never kill a typical like this.
Never say never, buddy. Never say never.
No, a typical. If I do, it'll be crazy. But I mean, he's one of the biggest typical in the world. And I've never.
Top
When you get
25,
a
but
deer,
who's counting?
when you see a deer go over 200 inches and he nets in the 190s as a typical, that's like almost unheard of in the whitetail world. That's pretty crazy. So
Listen, what's
uh,
crazy is that we're not saying Iowa,
no,
Indiana,
Yeah.
Kansas, Nebraska.
Ohio,
We're saying
Yeah.
Missouri, yeah,
Louisiana.
and that's where the high fence comments come.
That's right. I tell you one thing that's super cool about it, and it just shows you, about Tyler's character and the real tree families morals, and the way they respect the animal is, obviously one of the first people we FaceTime was Mr. Bill, but Daniel, who'd been with Realtree for I think 15, 20 years now, calls Tyler, or Tyler calls him, however it went down, and was talking, said, man, your dad, as many places that he's hunted, he always wanted to kill a deer, a 200-inch deer, and he's never killed one. And I find that astonishing. And and then he's like, that's congratulations. That's something that that you wanted to. And that's to me, I mean, that's a pretty emotional thing. Pretty big, And then to talk to Mr. Bill, and then I find out that Mr. Bill had actually drawn back and shot at two different ones. One hit a piece of barbed wire, and then one hit a camera arm. And that's when I realized that's where Tyler gets it from. It's because Tyler gets a little nervous, and he might shoot something off. It's been there's been a lot of building blocks to get to this part right here, Robbie. To get him to where one shot, one kill is a big thing. So
That's right. A big deer. Even after all these years, you would think hunting them, would
I'm
maybe
telling you,
calm my nerves down a little bit because people
that
think that
deer
I
he's
don't
talking
get
about
nervous.
that deer he's talking about that I was actually hunting a buck. I was looking for a management buck to shoot to get the cape to put on the replica of Stomper that I was gonna put in the live. So Tyler's videoing me. And this deer we call Butternut because he was really, really wide, but his brow tines or G1s came up and they're just flat, looked like a butternut, and it wasn't like bladed out, but it's just like a butternut. He walks across the field, and it was cold that day, and wind was blowing pretty strong, and I'm thinking it's like the wind shaking the stand, I'm like, oh, there's Butternut, and he's like, I was like, what? Are you are you cold? I'm, I am shook. I am shook. I said, "This is why you miss deer, buddy. You're not even shooting the deer. I'm not even shooting the deer. But he just gets so fired up, and I love it. I mean, to me, my grandpa told me years ago. He said, son, when I shot a deer, he said, you feel how your heart's pumping, you're a little short of breath. He said, if you ever get when you're not doing that, you need to quit hunting because you're killing and not hunting. And
Yeah,
he said we're hunters, and that's that stuck with me. I got to where when I was a kid, I grew up in some, hunting in Deer Park, Louisiana. Deer Park is on the map. Deer Park, Louisiana is the name of the place, and rightfully so. I mean, it was, if you didn't see 30 to 60 deer on a stand, the deer weren't moving. And so I got to where if I could see it with a rifle, I killed my first deer with a shotgun. Then I graduated to a rifle. Then I got to a bolt action, and it's like, well, if I could see it, I could kill it. Well, the guy's like, well, y'all try bow hunting. Man, it just totally re-energized me. And I missed all, slinging arrows at 40 yards, and then, got to get them a little closer, Drew, and so did my share of all that stuff. And then I got to where I could, kill a deer at 50, 60 yards back then. So I kind of got away from it and really got into duck hunting. And then got from duck hunting, went into to taking people duck hunting and this, that, and other. And it was probably 7 or 8 years that I basically quit deer hunting because it did not get my heart pumping. And I finally went back and went to a place in Georgetown, Louisiana, which is tiny woods, small deer, brown is down, running dogs type deal. If you see a deer, it's a big deal. And a doe comes out, and my heart started pumping. I was like, I'm back. All right, I can go deer hunting again. And so now I'm really growing the deer is really what fires me up now. So.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, I appreciate both of you telling me telling us the story, letting everyone hear about it. It's an incredible accomplishment, especially for the South, especially for Louisiana. And, you know, again, it shows you what, again, time, effort, money, patience, and then, as you said, rolling of the dice and having just that lady luck, you know, the Lord saying, okay, now's the day
That's it.
to come together, because that's deer hunting. And that's really
That's
hunting writ large, right? Everyone says, yeah, people have thrown high fence into this argument. High fence is just about luck. And so
Right.
the idea that luck increases behind a high fence, sometimes true, sometimes not true.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day,
Fences make good neighbors.
Oh.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, appreciate you, Drew. Thank you. Appreciate you sending those pictures to me in Zimbabwe and us lining this up so quickly, because we're December 19th. You killed this deer December 6th. And I said to you, Drew, I said, do not go on another podcast. I want to be the podcast that talks about this. So Tyler, thank you, man. It's great connecting with you again, and look forward to our paths crossing here in show season that's coming up.
Sounds good. I look forward to it. Thank you, Robbie, for the time.
Yep.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.